Hi, my name is Claudia Belen, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a Tres Leches cake from scratch. My pronouns are she, they, and my hometown is Highland Park, Los Angeles, and I also grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, the older side of Glendale. My inspiration for this activity is actually both of my cultures. So I am Nicaragüense and I am also Mexican, and when I was a kid growing up, I would always see Tres Leches in the markets, and so I always just kind of assumed Tres Leches was a Mexican dessert. I didn't even think about it. And as I got older, I did some digging and I actually realized Tres Leches has origins in Nicaragua as well as being a Mexican traditional dish. So today I want to walk you through some of that history. And this activity is going to take you about 1 hour, but it's super easy, and I promise it's one of the best cakes you have ever had. I've made this about 5 times now for family and friends, and there's never any left. So thanks for joining me. Cool. Let's get started.
Okay, so the first thing I do when I make my cake is I like to separate my dry and my wet ingredients. Right now, these are the dry ingredients. So you're going to need 1 cup of sugar. Just pop that in there. And then you're going to need 1.5 cups of flour. I know this is a huge Pyrex. And then I'm also going to need, I can't remember, I think this is, it's 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Sorry, I don't really look at my teaspoons too much. So then I go ahead and I just mix it. I give it a really rough mix because I'm stubborn and I really don't want to whip out a whisk for this. Just do that. Honestly, I do it for longer because, again, I'm stubborn and I refuse to dirty a whisk for this because I was taught to mix with forks. I don't know if that's just a me thing or an everybody thing, but anyway. I like to mix this up as best as I can to really work the sugar in there. Alright, so these are my wet ingredients, and my wet ingredients are 1/2 cup of unsalted butter. I just did regular butter because I was too lazy and it's just what I had, so we're going to do that. Then we also do 5 eggs, and I just went ahead and pre-cracked those because, trust me, you don't want to see me do that. And then you're going to need 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. So since my butter's separated a little bit, I'm just going to scrape at it, but then we're going to blend these up, again, using a fork because I really don't believe in whisks. So I'm just going to rough it and get that nice sound. This is something I can't really explain. You just kind of do it after your mom yells at you a bunch in the kitchen to do it right. And so you kind of learn this out of fear. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that as an adult, that I can apparently whisk eggs with a fork. And then I add that into my butter. Then I'm going to add in the vanilla. I'm trying to grab this without, whoop. Alright. And then I'm going to stir all of that up. It's going to look a little funny, but that's okay. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and grab my dry ingredients and kind of slowly add them in. I don't like overwhelming the wet ingredients all at once. I honestly learned this just through watching recipe videos online. I feel like layering it in is the best approach so that you get the most even cake. I don't know if that's scientific or not. I have no idea. But I've done this with pancakes and all sort of things that I bake, and I found that this is the best method. So just gonna keep layering that slowly. Take your time. Don't rush like me. Just get a nice even mix. I think this really allows for a really good base for our cake, because this is eventually going to be the base that we put all of the milks into, and that part's really fun. So just do that until you get a nice and even mix. See, it's getting nice and thick. And then again, this is a good arm workout for those of you staying at home, not able to go to the gym right now. I have found that this has been a really great way to get my forearms ripped. Alright, and because that looks pretty good to me, and I'm sure at this point you're really hungry for cake, I'm gonna say that's good enough. So it's good enough, and then let's get that into our dish so we can bake it. Alright, so I already buttered my pan. Honestly, I just melt a little bit and then rub it with the stick. And then I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle just a little bit of flour. I'm going to tap that around to get a nice coverage. I've never done this before. I only ever buy the Pam thing, so hopefully this works. I think it will. Let's just pretend that this looks better than it does. So I'm going to keep shaking and shaking. Alright, and then I'm going to lay down my cake right in there, going straight for it. Okay, so I've got that all laid in there. You can use a spatula or be like me, y te embaraste los dedos completamente, and then you have to wash your hands and come back to pretend like you did not in fact just do that. So I've got that in the oven at 350 degrees, and it's going to hang out in there for the next 30 minutes.
So while the cake is baking in the oven, I thought I'd go over some fun facts about myself. One fun fact is that I accidentally killed a goose when I was a kid. My sister had a pet goose, and I accidentally closed the door, and I guess goose necks are really fragile, so it slammed on its neck, and that's how I became a goose murderer at the age of 4. It traumatized me a great deal. I love the Bee Gees. I think the Bee Gees are amazing. You can't tell me that the Bee Gees aren't incredible. I love the Bee Gees and Mariah Carey. They're my 2 favorites. I too have a bachelor's degree that I paid way too much money for. Just joking, ASU, I still love you. I actually got my degree in English.
And because it was already browning at the edges, I took it out, and I'm going to go ahead and poke it all over. Like, don't be shy. Like, really poke it. Okay, so here's why the cake gets its name. We're going to do our 3 milks. We're going to do 2 cups of whole milk. And I'm really fancy, so I got the organic kind. I feel like it tastes better. I don't know if that's just me, but shout out to Organic Valley. And then I'm going to do, obviously, 1 can of la lechera, which is going to take a little bit, so maybe I should have waited. Whoops. I'm also going to do 1 can of carnation evaporated milk. From here, we're going to mix all 3 milks together. You can get a whisk, but again, I've made it clear I'm anti-whisk, just because I like forks. Guess I'm old school. So I'm going to do my best to mix all 3 milks until I get a nice blend. Okay, so if you remember, we already punched a bunch of holes into our cake. Now we're going to go ahead and see some magic. This is one of my favorite parts. You literally just pour over, and you think the cake isn't going to soak it all up, but oh yeah, it does, and it's amazing. You'd be surprised, so don't be shy. See how quickly it's already soaking it up? Perfect. So we're going to let that sit for a little bit, let it sit in itself, and then we're going to go ahead and make some icing. Okay, so per the original recipe, you're going to do 1.5 cups heavy whipping cream, which is this guy, 1 cup of sugar, and then 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So I actually do kind of my own version of this because I don't like so much sugar in it, and this isn't 1.5 cups of heavy whipping cream. So I actually get this little guy, pour that in, And I do half a cup of sugar. I'm going to put that in. And then I do, this is a 1/4 teaspoon. I do about half a teaspoon of vanilla. I just like the icing flavor to be a little more subtle. But then I'm going to make the KitchenAid do all the work and then take all the credit. So from here, I let that go until it forms stiff peaks, which I know is in every single cookbook ever and never really helps. But basically till I can do this. And it kind of sticks on my finger. Alright, so that's our cake that has soaked up all the tres leches. Now I'm going to go in with my frosting. I like taking a big dollop. I don't really think there's a perfect method to this. Just do it. And you'll have fun. My cake's a little more round this time around, but that's okay. It's still good cake. So I'm just gonna spread that all over. Get a nice coverage. Okay, so my frosting is all done, and now I slice some strawberries and cherries, and I'm gonna lay that across the top. So here's some food history I promised you. The Tres Leches cake actually kind of has an unknown beginning. So the theory kind of goes that Nestle had printed the recipe on the cans in order to sell some evaporated milk and the sweet condensed milk, which is known as la lechera. So I think that's pretty cool that different Latin American countries all have kind of their own version of the Tres Leches cake. So for me, because I'm Nicaragüense and Mexican, I kind of took that as a really special way of blending together my two identities. And this cake symbolizes for me just something really sweet, making meaning out of something like so many cultures do. And then the cherries traditionally used in Nicaragua to top the cake, so I have sliced cherry. I'm doing sliced strawberries to symbolize Mexico, because in Mexico, strawberries are traditionally used on this cake. And because I'm a first-generation immigrant, I actually got this recipe off of allrecipes.com, like the good millennial I am. And I actually think that tells you a lot about my history. So some of us don't really have family recipes to base our recipes off of. I've never had a recipe for this before. I just saw it in the markets and I absolutely love it. And I loved it even more when I found out that it has both Nicaraguan and Mexican roots, just like me. And something I thought was strictly Mexican, and I think this experience is not unique to a lot of Central American and Mexican people, that maybe they have other nationalities and sometimes they feel, because of where they regionally live, that the regional identity kind of supersedes the other identity, but that's not true. So I chose this cake because it relates to my binational identity. I saw this cake at so many quinceaneras, birthdays, and parties, and obviously when I learned that the origins are a blend of Mexican and Nicaraguan tradition, it made me incredibly happy. So what Mexican Independence Day means to me is that I'm both, and that history is complicated and I'm complicated, but I can always make meaning from it. So your cake should be all done by now, and this is what my slice looks like. What does yours look like? It smells really good too. I just wanted to say a different kind of happy Mexican Independence Day. I wanted to say Happy Mexican Independence Day, but also Happy Independence Day to all the Central American countries who celebrate their Independence Days around this time of year. I think in order to be better Mexicans and in order to be better U.S. Mexicans, we should absolutely acknowledge how Mexico and Central America have a very complicated relationship to one another. And so I use my art to make meaning out of that and to find something positive. So thanks for joining me. You can find me at Claudia Belen, and Claudia is spelled like cloud, and then Dia, Dia Belen on Instagram. Thanks!